Okay, now we're at step 2 of citing our drawing. This citing process, depending on the size of your drawing, if you're drawing the whole model, can take up to an entire hour. I'm going to try to move as quickly as possible to get all the citing measurements in. Now for the demo, I'll move quickly, but for your own purposes, at home, in your home studio, you may take up to an hour to do all this citing. Okay, so I'm just putting in the angle. This is indicating the shoulder. I'm going to measure the angle of the shoulder, angle of the hips. So I notice that the angle of the hips and the shoulder are like so. The hair of the model comes down across her shoulder. This arm comes out, and then right now I'm looking at angles, cuts across the lap. The hands are hidden. So I'm going to measure how far out. So if I were to put the brow line right here, remember we talked about the thirds rule. If the hairline to brow, brow to base of nose to chin. So we have our facial features measured in. The neck is coming down. Okay, so we've got the head of our model. I'm going to move out from the cheek of the model and see where does that her right shoulder hit. So her right shoulder is 1/2 the distance of the head. So if this is the shape of the head, I go to the half of the head, come down, and this is where the model's right shoulder is. So I put these marks in, and then I start to connect the shapes. Of course, as you're doing this later, you can go in. Right now, I'm just putting in the important marks. Under the chin, I'm looking at the pit of the neck is right here. Pit of the neck is an important feature. Coming down. Once again, using my plumb line. How far out from the cheek does that knee hit? This is a good time to notice alignments. I noticed that knee, the model's knee, hits right along the same alignment of the right shoulder. Okay, so now I'm going to start to do alignments for the lower half of the model's body. So the model is sitting in a chair. I can indicate the type of chair. All these details can go in later. But for now, I'm focused on the model. So the model is seated on a chair that has a leather cushion on it. So I'm going to check what is the distance between this hip and the top of the second knee. So once again, checking relationships. The knee underneath the leg is hitting right at the base of the hip, and it's at an angle. So the knee underneath the top leg, the top of it is right about here, and then that hip comes down in this way, cuts across and goes back. And then we have this leg, this second knee, going straight down, meeting the boot. So here again, we are putting in those important features. Now the tip of the boot is right here at the base. And now let's take care of this knee here. So this knee comes out. Here again, I'm using a combination of sight measuring and putting in my gesture. Now as the model, as there's some foreshortening in this, we can compensate for that by making larger shapes in this foreground area. So once again, measuring top of the boot. Where is the top of the boot? In the foreground, it's going to appear larger. So right now I'm just putting general markings for where the top of the boot is hitting in relationship to the lower boot. This lower boot comes out at this angle. Keeping everything just roughed in and angular. Okay, I'm noticing the base of the model's bottom, hidden behind the chair. It's right about here. There's a nice shadow area in there which I will just block in later. So the only other feature, so here we have the model's knee, lap, which I can erase some features that are distracting. This goes up and over. This comes down. Top of the knee, up and down. Here we have the model's left arm coming in here. And here we have some foreshortening. The hand is coming into the lap. We have some foreshortening. Here again, we want to measure where is the elbow. So that elbow is one head above the lap. So the base, if this is the base of the lap, if I say this is the artist's, the bottom of her bottom, then this elbow hits right about here. Putting in all the measurements that we need, helping this foreshortening. This arm comes in behind the knee. At this point, you can get rid of any lines that you don't need. Right now, we're working on just that outer form. What's it looking like? You can go in and double check your measurements, get rid of any information that you do not need. Now this, the sitters, there's a nice shadow in here that indicates where the hips are sinking in. Once again, we do not want to lose our center point. This is where the hips change direction. So that will fall into the shadow, but we don't want to completely lose it yet. We're going to have to think of how will we define that shadow point. Under the knee, we have the chair coming outward. Once again, hips are going to be tricky because this is foreshortening. So in this particular case, we will end up doing just blocking in this big shape. Keep in mind that we're always looking at shapes. So just above the sitter's elbow, the model's elbow, we have the edge of the chair. This comes forward. Once again, measuring directly below the knee is the front part of the chair. So I can bring this down and it hits right where the boot is. Placing in the chair and the environment will help to ground the model, the sitter, into a space. So it works to put that one part of the chair, even if it's not the entire chair, into the scene. So we're just quickly creating the environment. Okay, so now we've just sketched in. The model has long hair, so I'll bring the hair in, comes down to the breast line.